Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness today, you and I were able to find each other on this wild little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be covering a Brazilian case. We're going to be discussing the horrible murder of 29-year-old Tatiane Spitzner. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically. You, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you want. They're both BRATTERSTEIN, but no pressure. And now that I am done begging you to join my cult, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now this video, again, is on a case from Brazil, and it was a difficult one for me to research because I don't speak Spanish. I live in Los Angeles. I really should, but I don't. So researching this case I found to be a bit of a challenge. There are English articles, obviously, which I devoured every one of them, but there are also a lot of interviews with family members and jailhouse interviews with Tatiane's murderer, and they are in Spanish. On YouTube, they do have English subtitles, which I did utilize, but they were a bit broken. So I did the best I could with the information I had. I'm certain that there's some details that I've either missed or skewed slightly, but I did the best I could to scour the internet for anything that was in English that I could use to fact check, and also watching all of these interviews with English subtitles to put together the most comprehensive video for you today. Obviously, since I don't speak Spanish, it might have been easier for me just not to cover this case at all, and let somebody who speaks Spanish cover this case. However, once I learned about this case, I first saw this case in like a Facebook true crime group, and I read all about it, and I watched the footage that's available for this case because Tatiane's murder was not captured on video, but the lead up of her assault, the assault leading up to her murder, was captured on numerous video cameras, and that footage is available online. You can find all of it. It's upsetting, but you can find all of it. And once I read what I read and I saw what I saw, I became consumed, like I wanted to learn everything I could. And when I saw that this case doesn't have like a good comprehensive video on it, I wanted to do it because I believe it should be told. It's a really horrible, sad story, and I did the best I could with it. Hopefully you guys get what you want from this video because I really tried. And if you do speak Spanish, any of my subscribers, I know some of you do, if you know more about this, if you can leave anything down below that we could learn from, that would be tweet. So with all that said, I think it's time that I stop talking about it and start being about it and tell you the story that you came here to hear. So with that said, come, gather around, and let me tell you the story of the tragic murder of 29-year-old Tatiane Spitzner. Now, where do we even begin? I guess we can begin by jumping in our handy-dandy time machine and heading to a place called Guarapuava, which is a city in the state of Paraná, Brazil, in 2018. I looked up how to pronounce that. I couldn't find the official pronunciation of that city, but I will put the name on the screen. And you can roast me in the comments. It was in the city of Guarapuava where a 29-year-old attorney named Tatiane Spitzner lived with her husband, a 32-year-old biology professor named Luis Felipe Manvaler. Again, his last name is going to be up on the screen as well because I'm doing the best I can here. And the two of them lived in the city in a very tall apartment building, and their apartment was on the 4th floor. Tatiane and Luis met in a bar in 2013, and apparently things went super well because they ended up marrying later that same year in 2013, and shortly thereafter the couple moved to Germany where they, I believe, both went to school, him becoming a professor of biology and her an attorney. From the outside and from their two social medias, you would think that they were a good match, that things were happy and filled with love between the two of them, but apparently even from the beginning, Luis was an abusive dick. A friend who knew the couple when they lived in Germany said that at that time, which was in 2013, the year they met, Luis was already abusing Tatiane and that she showed up with fresh bruises and marks on her body and refused to talk about them. So this was already happening from basically the beginning of their relationship, he was abusing her, which is just so messed up. And the two lived in Germany until 2016. And it was at that point where they moved back to Brazil, and they moved to the apartment building in Parana, Brazil. And it was this apartment building where Tatiane would later lose her life. And Tatiane lost her life in such a horrible way. We will, of course, get into the details, the specifics a little bit later. But for the shortest of synopsises, it started with neighbors. Lots of neighbors hearing Tatiana's desperate pleas and cries for help. And ended with Tatiane dead on the ground after going over the couple's 4th floor balcony. And almost the entire attack leading up to the murder, not the actual murder, but the entire attack leading up to it, was caught on video. Now, speaking of that night, all of this took place during the early morning hours of July 22nd, 2018. And when I say early morning hours, I mean it was between 2 and 3 a.m. this entire thing. And it's said that the couple had been having a nice night out together doing what couples do when they started to get into a fight. And they started fighting because Tatiane had found photos of another woman in Luis's phone. He says this isn't true, or rather he says that he never cheated on Tatiane. He said that Tatiane was just very, very insecure and would accuse him of such. And it was weird to him that she was so insecure because she was, quote, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. It sounds like gaslighting to me, but okay. So after Tatiane's murder, when the trial started, the trial against Luis ended up being one of the largest and most popular murder trials in recent years in Brazil. And I think this is largely due to, one, timing, which we're going to get into, but mostly because the entire attack was caught on video prior to her being murdered. It started, you see him on the street in front of the apartment, you see apartment camera video footage and the parking garage video footage. So you see a lot of what happens. And you see the fight start in front of the couple's apartment complex with the two of them sitting in their car. It's a white vehicle. And you see the two fighting in the car. And you see what looks like Luis stopping her from getting out of the car and hitting her over and over. And this goes on for several minutes. And for reference, Luis at this time, if you watch interviews with him in jail, he's changed physically a lot, but at this time was a pretty big dude. He was a pretty ripped dude. He was a specialist in jiu-jitsu and had earned himself a purple belt. So he was a very strong, capable guy. So I have watched all of the security footage that is available online for this case, and I'm now going to tell you what happened that night. Just know in advance that this is a bit of a tough one, so if domestic violence is an issue for you, that is what this whole video is about, for one, which I thought would be clear, but particularly this part, we're going to get into what happened leading up to her death. So again, as I said, this all took place between 2 and 3 a.m. that morning, and what you first see is Tatiane and Luis's car pull up in front of their apartment building. It's a white car, and it's sort of double parked, still in the street. And you see the two of them sitting there, and then you see what looks like Luis start hitting Tatiane over and over before the passenger side door opens. Tatiana's door opens, and she tries to get out of the car. It's at that point that Luis grabs her and continues hitting her over and over until the car door finally shuts. Now, Luis, in a prison interview, said that what we're seeing isn't what happened, that he was actually trying to open the door and trying to get her to get out of the car because he wanted to be alone. But that is not at all what it looks like when you watch the video. So this went on for several minutes before the car door actually closes, them fighting, going back and forth. Him hitting her, him pushing her, you can see it through the windshield. And finally she closes the car door, and after she closes her passenger side door, the two drive into the parking garage. And once in the parking garage, there's camera footage there as well. You see Luis stop the car, but he doesn't turn the car off, and then he gets out of the car, he walks around the vehicle, he rips open Tatiana's door, and then he rips her out of the car. And once he has her out of the car, he grabs her either by, it's hard to tell if it's her neck or her shoulders, and he slams her into the car and is like yelling in her face before he like lets her go. He gets back in the car, he drives off, and she walks away. In the next part of the video, you see Luis chasing Tatiane all around the parking garage. And it's clear from the footage that she's trying so hard to avoid him, to get away from him. She's even hiding behind pillars and hiding behind cars. But he ends up finding her. And experts believe at this point he put her in a rear naked choke, I believe is what it's called, which is like a strangulation hold in jiu-jitsu, where essentially he would come up behind her and he would put her neck in the crook of his elbow and hold her there until she passed out. And it was at this point that she went unconscious, and she laid unconscious on the ground for about 2 minutes before he came back up to her and kicked her and then lifted her up off the ground. And once she was awake and able to see what was going on and like be functional, she started to run from him again. In the next part of the video, you then see Luis walk over to the elevator that was in the parking garage and like get it going, get it started. And then he goes and gets Tatiana, and she starts running, and he starts chasing her, and eventually he chases her into the elevator. And once she got in the elevator, she immediately like tries to hit the button for the ground floor, and instead of their apartment floor, obviously. And it's at this point that Luis grabs her and like throws her to the ground of the elevator, trying to stop her. And so I think she was successful in hitting the ground floor button, if I remember correctly. And as soon as those elevator doors open, she tries to make a run for it. She tries so hard to get out of the elevator on that ground floor and to make a run for it, but he goes out and he grabs her and he rips her back into the elevator. She tries so hard to stop him. She's like kicking and slamming herself as dead weight onto the floor to stop him. And she tries hitting all the other elevator buttons to maybe, I don't know, alert someone or make the elevator stop at other stops on the way up to give her a chance to escape again. But he like grabs her and slams her super hard into the walls of the elevator and throws her on the ground. When the two finally reach the fourth floor, Tatiana literally, the doors open and she puts her hands out on either side of the elevator to stop herself from getting out on that floor. And like Luis comes up behind her and like goes like this super hard into her arms and into her body, like slamming it in and shoving her out of the elevator. And then he just picks up their stuff off the elevator floor, and the two exit the elevator onto their apartment floor together. From here, there are 15 minutes of unaccounted for time. And it's during these 15 minutes of unaccounted for time where they were in their apartment and not on camera that Luis murdered Tatiana. Luis claims that once they were inside the apartment, the tables totally turned, and it wasn't him who was aggressive, it was Tatiana. That he was just sitting on the couch playing on his phone, and she got super pissed that he was on his phone because previously, you know, there had been photos found on his phone. So she started to attack him while he sat on the couch. He says he wasn't even mad at her. He doesn't know why this happened. And I'm like, that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. One, how can you say you weren't mad at her after the whole lead up of what everyone saw you do right before this? So this is what you do when you're not mad? Okay. And then all of a sudden, once she is in the apartment, she starts attacking you. It just sounds like bullshit to me, but sure. Why not? Whatever. He says at this point, he then realizes that the front door is unlocked, and he gets up to go and lock the front door because this is their routine. He would always be the one to lock up the apartment. He says as he walked to the front door to lock it, he sees Tatiana move past him towards the balcony, and he thinks to himself, like, good, go outside, get some air, you irrational woman, and calm yourself down, right? But he says he notices that she's moving very fast, like running. So he turns to like look at her, and that's when he sees her throw herself over the balcony. He says he just sees her hands there, and that the whole thing was like a horror movie to him. After this, Luis goes downstairs, retrieves his wife's body from the pavement below, and brings it back up to their apartment in the elevator. Once in the elevator with her body, he looks panicked. He's like covered in blood. He's got his hands in his hair, like he's holding his head, and he just looks like he's freaking out. He takes her out, and he takes her dead body into their apartment. He then comes back a couple minutes later in just a white t-shirt. He's no longer wearing his blood-soaked dress shirt, and he starts to clean up the scene. He cleans up the ground outside the elevator. He then goes inside the elevator and starts cleaning the walls and the floor of the elevator, trying to get rid of any blood. And he's seen rubbing something off of his knuckles as he rides the elevator, which he then takes to the parking garage, where he gets in his car and he takes off and just leaves. And by this time, the police had already arrived, and you see, because there's different angles of the video camera footage, and you see the footage from outside the apartment where Tatiana's body had fallen, and you see police parked out front, and you see his car go down the street, just booking it, getting away from the scene of the crime. Luis was then arrested a few hours later following a traffic accident where he crashed his car on a motorway more than 320 kilometers away from the crime scene, which is just about under 200 miles for those of us who use miles and not kilometers. Police obviously believe that Luis was fleeing the scene, and for whatever reason, and I couldn't find out exactly why they thought this, they thought that he was going to flee to Paraguay. But he says that no, he wasn't trying to flee, he wasn't trying to run, he wasn't trying to get away from the scene of a crime, that he was just too disturbed by the sight of the woman that he loved, the love of his life, his wife, throwing herself over a balcony, that he just had to get away. He couldn't be there. And he said, of course, no, he did not kill Tatiana, okay? He says that Tatiana took her own life, that she threw herself over that balcony after the two of them had a fight because apparently the fight was so bad that she just needed to die about it. So yeah, he denied killing her. He said he didn't kill his wife. He said he loved his wife, but he did admit that after she had thrown herself over the balcony, he had gone downstairs, he had retrieved her body, and he had brought it up to their apartment before he just left the scene. Didn't report it, didn't say anything to anyone, just went, collected her body, put her in their apartment, and left. Once police got into the apartment and they searched the apartment, they found blood everywhere, as I'm sure you can imagine. And they also found a large stash of medications and anabolic steroids that were all Luis's. Luis. I've been going back and forth with that. They were all his. And he had been using them to improve his strength and his physical appearance. So all of these medications were prescribed to him, but he was taking far more than he needed and far more than he was prescribed to take. And in a jailhouse interview, he was asked about this. And don't you guys worry. He was not taking these to improve how he looked or to improve his strength, nothing like that. He was a scientist. He's a biologist, remember? He wanted to take these in these excessive doses because it was science. It was all done in the name of science, so he could see how it would affect the human body. Okay. Tatiana's father did say in an interview that he noticed that Luis grew in size and muscularity very, very quickly in like the year leading up to Tatiana's murder. He also said that he had seen Luis experience roid rage, where he freaked out on some guy at a gathering, like it was completely unprovoked, and he just like lost his temper super easy, which is something that does happen with steroids. Roid rage is, it's a thing. And he said he saw him flip out and like beat the crap out of this guy, and he remembers at the time being concerned, but not overly concerned because he never anticipated that his daughter would end up being the recipient of this rage just a couple of months later, because this happened, I believe, in April, where he saw him flip out in the sky, and then right after Tatiana. Anyways, initially the investigators had said that they believed that the investigation of this murder would only take about 30 days, which I thought was weird that they gave an estimation. I don't know if that's a common thing in Brazil, but either way, it ended up taking longer than that because this was, quote, a complicated case. And they ended up doing these simulations in the couple's apartment. Like they did 3 different simulations where essentially they would go to the couple's apartment on the 4th floor and they would use like a dummy, a doll that was the same height and weight as Tatiana. And they would just kind of like, they would just like do these simulations where they would drop the doll from different angles to try to determine exactly what could have happened to Tatiana that night. Since he's saying she jumped, they're thinking he threw her. They're trying to figure out what was going on, right? My brain turned off there. I don't know if you saw that. Like, I just forgot how to speak English for a second, but I'm just so pregnant. It's insane. But anyways, this reminds me of CSI Las Vegas. No, it doesn't. It reminds me of Dexter and the Trinity Killer. Let's just move past where my brain goes sometimes, because sometimes it doesn't need to go where it goes and it just does. And then I tell you and then I'm like, why did I tell you that? I don't know, but moving on. Anyways, these simulations ended up being helpful in showing that Tatiana definitely didn't throw herself off the balcony because it just didn't make sense. It didn't line up. But these simulations didn't end up being totally necessary because the medical examiner's report came out. 2 months after Tatiana was murdered, the medical examiner's report came out, the autopsy was done, all that jazz, and her cause of death was revealed. And her cause of death was revealed to be mechanical asphyxia. So although evidence did show that Tatiana had fought to defend herself, she was ultimately overpowered, 1, because tests indicated that her blood alcohol level was significantly high at the time of her murder, leaving her pretty vulnerable to her husband's attack, but also, he was a big dude, hopped up on steroids, with a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and he strangled her to death. There were literally imprints of Luis's hands on her throat after death, okay? The hyoid bone in the front of her throat was broken, which is an injury that's common with strangulation. And then from there, she had a lot of injuries, fractures to her body that were consistent with the 40-foot fall that she sustained after going over the balcony. According to the report, there was, quote, no evidence of any chemical reactions, end quote, such as adrenaline or cortisol traces in her body that would indicate either fear or awareness of her falling to the ground. And this was consistent with the fact that she was already dead before she went over the balcony. Her body didn't react. She wasn't scared because she was already dead. Once the trial did begin, there was a slew of witnesses who were all brought forward to be character witnesses to testify to what a piece of shit Luis was, all through his and Tatiana's marriage, and to illustrate the clear pattern of abuse that Tatiana sustained leading up to her murder. One of Tatiana's close friends brought forward a bunch of text messages that she had received from Tatiana. And in these text messages, she talked about how she was scared of her husband and how her husband mistreated her and, quote, hated her to death. And this friend said that Tatiana was also showing up with fresh cuts and fresh bruises, but that she just stayed with him for whatever reason. And she also revealed that Tatiana had told this friend that her husband was taking steroids and had turned into a completely different person once he started taking them. She also said that Tatiana, though sticking around, did want to get a divorce, but that anytime Tatiana would bring up the idea of separating to Luis, he would freak out and he would get hysterical and he would start to cry and he would literally throw himself on the floor like a man-child. And so she stuck around. And Luis was asked about this. He was asked about, the two separating, and he was asked about her being afraid of him. And he said something to the effect of, Tatiana wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of losing him because she loved him so much. And she was the one who was overly possessive, not him. It was essentially his response. But her family, her sister, her cousin, her father, have all said that that's not the case, that Tatiana was not happy, and that the two separating was imminent. It was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. The defense tried to contradict this, saying that Tatiana and Luis had a, quote, happy relationship, and that, they had been together a long time, and there had never been any complaints filed about Luis or domestic violence, anything. And since they'd been together since 2013 and nothing had been reported, naturally that meant that nothing had ever happened. Testimony was also heard from medical professionals that stated that Tatiana was dead prior to being thrown over the couple's fourth floor balcony, and she couldn't very well throw her own dead body over this balcony, now could she? No. There was also testimony from neighbors heard, neighbors saying that they heard Tatiana screaming and crying desperately for help, though nobody helped her, before then seeing her lying in a pool of blood at the bottom of the concrete, on the concrete under the couple's fourth floor balcony. These witnesses said that they then saw Luis go downstairs and retrieve his wife's broken body, and one witness reported hearing Luis say to his wife, quote, "My love, wake up." The prosecutor on this case said of the murder, and I quote, "Our investigation proves that the victim was killed inside the apartment by asphyxiation, and her body was thrown over the balcony of the apartment. We believe the accused then took the elevator to the ground floor and collected Tatiana's body, taking it back up to the apartment in the elevator. We suspect that before she was killed, Luis subjected his wife to a prolonged period of violent physical aggression. This was not suicide, but femicide. The aggressor then attempted to escape by car." So, femicide is defined as the killing of a woman or girl, in particular by a man, and on account of her gender. And apparently in Brazil, 1,133 women were victims of femicide in 2017 alone. And according to a Brazilian forum on public security, in 2017, the year before the murder, an average of 530 women reported suffering domestic violence per day. And Brazil has the 7th highest rate of femicide in the world, nearly doubling the rate that we have in the United States, which I never knew. I had no idea it was such a thing over there. I know it's a thing everywhere. I just didn't know it was such a thing, in particular in Brazil. Because I've never been to Brazil. I should talk to my friend. I have 2 friends that are Brazilian, and I've never asked them about this because until looking into this case, it just hadn't come up. In the end, the jury found Luis guilty of the murder, and he was sentenced to 31 years, 9 months, and 18 days in prison for the murder of his wife, Tatiane Spitzner. The judge also ordered Luis to pay Tatiana's parents the amount of $100,000 in Brazilian monies, which is equivalent to $24,380 in American money in restitution. The attorney for Tatiana's family has said that they see this verdict to be a milestone in the fight against femicide in that country, and Luis's attorney says that they intend to appeal the conviction. So Tatiana's murder started a nationwide debate about domestic violence in general and the widespread notion that you shouldn't, quote, stick a spoon in marital disputes. Following Tatiana's case, citizens of Brazil who were affected by her murder took to Twitter to urge others to interfere when they saw domestic violence and to do something about it, because so many people, like so much of what happened to Tatiana was public, so many people heard her cries for help and nobody did anything. One widely spread tweet that went around, like Brazilian Twitter at this time, was essentially just like begging those who saw it to do something. If they saw it, like, see something, say something, see something, do something. And this tweet said, and I quote, "When you hear a call for help, stick a spoon in, call the police. Try to prevent another femicide." This has just got to be so challenging with it being such a widespread issue in Brazil, because apparently like a third of the country's women have experienced some sort of domestic violence, and more than half of those that reported experiencing domestic violence experienced it at the hands of either their current or like a former partner. Many people on social media also took to using the hashtags #femicido, which I think is just femicide in Spanish. That's going to be my hot take there. And the other hashtag was Maria da Pinha. And apparently they used this hashtag because Tatiana's murder happened right around the time of the anniversary of a 2006 domestic abuse law being put into effect that imposed longer sentences on those convicted of domestic violence, following the survival story of a woman named Maria da Pinha. Pinha? P-E-N-H-A. And Maria, man, I read about her because I was like, well, I want to know about this as well, since this pertains to Tatiana's story. Sort of. And her story is so sad, man. Oh my God. So she was also a Brazilian woman married to a man who was abusive, just like Tatiana. And this man in the 80s tried to murder her twice. The first time he shot her in the bed while she slept. Okay. She goes to the hospital. She survives. He tells them, the people at the hospital, the police, that an intruder broke into the house and shot her. That's what happened. And I guess they just took his word for it, even though it doesn't make sense. And so she lived through this. She gets released from the hospital. She goes back home to him. And he tries to kill her again by electrocuting her in the shower. This guy had no chill. It was after the second attempt on her life that she decided she needed to take legal action because, one, he had tried to kill her twice now, and two, the couple had kids and he was abusive to them as well. So she finally tried to do something about it, and it took years. It took like 7 years for him to actually get convicted of anything. And once he did, he was given 15 years in prison for trying to kill her twice. That's already bad, right? That's not even the end of the story. He ends up appealing his conviction, and he gets his conviction overturned. Long story short, they go through the whole process again, and he ends up spending a whopping 2 years in prison for trying to kill his wife twice. It's just absolutely insane. And obviously Maria's story doesn't have much to do with Tatiana's story, except for the fact that Tatiana's murder happened right around the anniversary of the new law being put in place because of work that Maria did. So that's why I looked into it and, brought this to you today. And I think that that's part of why this case got so much publicity, and of course the video footage that showed how savagely Tatiana was attacked by Luis prior to him killing her. The Brazil director of Human Rights Watch, which the Human Rights Watch is an independent international organization that works as part of a vibrant movement to uphold human dignity and advance the cause of human rights for all. Anyways, the Brazilian director, which was a woman named Maria at the time, said of the video and the assault of Tatiana and the crime in general, and I quote, "This video just reflects the level of violence we have been documenting. What Brazil has to learn is that most of these cases are preventable. It's very rare that a murder is the first case of violence." she continued saying that, like, the country now does have a good law in place because of, you know, Maria de Pinha and that whole situation. Like, the law in place is good, but it's not being implemented properly. And on top of that, the abuse is not being reported. Women are not reporting the abuse, whether it be for stigma, financial reasons, family pressures, them having kids. They're just not reporting the abuse that's taking place against them. Another issue is that police are just not equipped to handle these types of cases. They are not trained in this sort of thing, and they don't have the resources. So women are encouraged to go and report the domestic violence to women-specific police stations, like police stations that specialize in these types of crimes specifically. But there's a limited number of these stations, and they have limited hours. So it's not convenient for these women who are already in a bad position to go and report the violence they're experiencing. Apparently Brazil has about 500 police stations that specialize in these crimes against women specifically, but that's only like one police station for every 200,000 women. And apparently these police stations are closed in the evenings and on weekends, and this is the time when domestic violence is most likely to occur. So it just kind of seems like it's like a losing battle, you know? It just sucks. And like, it's crazy that this is such a problem over there. I had no idea until I started looking into this case, and now I'm just like, it's fucking crazy. Like, that's just so much. That's got to seem very, very helpless for anybody in that position. Anyways, Tatiana's sister did start an Instagram page specifically for Tatiana to talk about her case, to talk about her story. And the bio says, and I quote, and this is going to be in Spanish, I'm going to read it because I'm going to read it. I'm going to do the best I can here. It says, and I quote, Violencia diexa Marcus, novelas diexa feminicidios. Hashtag Justica por Tatiana, which translates to, I looked up the translation of this, okay? I did the best I could, please don't judge me. But basically what this translates to is violence leaves marks. Not seeing them leaves femicide. If you want to follow this Instagram page, the handle is Todos por Tatiana. I will put it on the screen. I have trouble with the translations. Obviously, I still follow the page because I think that that's, you know, like an important thing to do. And if you speak Spanish, this could be a great resource if you want to learn more about the case, because there's a lot of posts, not just the bios in Spanish, but it's like photos with Spanish writing that I could not translate. But if you want to follow it, I will have it on the screen so that you can look into it and then you can see more on this case. I think this could be a good way to learn about who Tatiana was as a person, as opposed to just who she was in her death. Because you guys know, if you've been here before, if you're not new, I like to learn as much as I can about a victim when I'm covering their case, because I feel like these people were people and they're much more than just their murders. So I like to learn as much as I can so I can tell you as much as I can to humanize them as much as possible. But unfortunately, I just wasn't able to do it as much in this case as I would have liked. But if you speak Spanish, this could be a good Instagram to follow, to read about Tatiana and to learn more about who she was as a person. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, so that so that the family could see the support, and also so that you could learn more about who Tatiana actually was. And I wish that I could have been the one to tell you all about her, but unfortunately, I just, I did the best I could with what I had, and I hope that I at least just did her case some justice here. So anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative, and it gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I want to thank you for remembering Tatiana with me today. What happened to her was so horrible. I can't even imagine being in her position, man. She must have been so terrified. She tried so hard to get away from him, to fight him, to run from him. And he just beat her, and he forced her into the elevator, and then he forced her into their apartment, and then he murdered her. She was so young, and that just must have been so horrific. And it's just really hard to think about, honestly. It's just so messed up. Why couldn't he just let her run? Why couldn't he just let her leave? Why couldn't he just let her leave the house and then him go upstairs and him chill out? Why did he have to force her up there and then fucking strangle her and throw her off the roof? It's so, not the roof, the balcony, but you know what I'm saying. It's just so pointless. And now she's gone and you're in jail. You dumb dick bitch. Anyways, guys, let me know of any cases you'd like to see me cover in the comments. As you know, I have a long list of cases, but whenever you leave me a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it so I can give it a little look-see, because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media will be listed down below, along with a link to my merch store. And that's pretty much it, because I didn't do my makeup in this video because my hands are suffering. Like, look. I have my little splints right here. You guys, it's not even a joke. I have 2 little splints to hold my hand. I'm actually gonna put them on. I'll leave this one out so I can. But yeah, I have splints for both my hands because this took so long, because my hands, I'll start to do it, then they go numb and then they hurt. And it's just like a whole thing. So I want a makeup listed down there, but if you guys want me to do this look for like a future Morbid makeup once my hands are functional, let a girl know. I can. I think it's really pretty. Jack apparently does too. What are you woofing about? But anyways, yeah, I'll have my merch store linked down below for your convenience, along with some other true crime YouTubers channels, so you can watch them as well. And I think that's it. I think I've said all the things I need to say. I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.